everyone for coming out. I didn't know if there'd be 2 people or 200 people, so we have somewhere in the middle. This is the first of a couple of conversations we're going to have about this. The downfall of some of the implementations that I've seen with any big swings or adjustments with calendars is that there weren't multiple opportunities to have conversations, both internally and externally with parents, community members, teachers. So thank you for being here. Last year we discussed this in 3 different categories, and there's kind of a 4th category now that I want to discuss, but this is kind of where we started. So the first option was to keep the current calendar, which is kind of a calendar that we adopted this year, which has a modified version to it. We went to the 1,068 hours versus traditional days. Return to a traditional calendar, which is what we had before we adjusted it slightly. And some people are like, how much adjustment did we really make? Well, it wasn't this huge, overwhelmingly different calendar, but it allows us to be more flexible with time, and more on that later. The modified calendar, which some people are calling the year-round calendar, is not an actual year-round calendar. We had a version of that last year that you all saw and probably even voted on, like 2 different versions of that. We had very limited conversation with our stakeholders on that, how we would respond to a calendar like that with our most vulnerable populations of students who may need those 2.5 square meals a day, etc. And student needs are our number 1 category that we care about. The next piece, the 4th option, if you will, is something that I want you to be aware of. The legislature passed something where you can start school pretty much any time after July 1, which is helpful. So the 4th version of all this, which I think could potentially be an even smarter option, is working out a modified calendar using the new date that isn't just a cookie cutter. Let's move from here, let's copy Magnolia's schedule, let's copy Nashville's schedule, and just do it that way. Now, we could do something like that. All that is still on the table, but we're actually having conversations about that versus just having a conversation with the school board and doing it that way. So why consider some of these modified options? Everybody take a look, if you can see that. These are all things that have come up in conversation, whether I've said it, a school board member has said it, a superintendent or a board member from a district that's adopted something new, the commissioner of education, teachers inside this district. These are just a combination. Now there's other comments too, and we'll get to some other considerations later. You have to meet the state required 1,068 hours for instruction. That's a given. You have to do that if you move to anything other than the 178 contact days. The conversation has been, okay, I'm not saying this is a truism, but the conversation has been less burnout for students and teachers. I've heard that come out of people's mouths, okay? More teaching and learning because you are starting school in the traditional quote-unquote summertime. More vacations during the year. That's literally been, I didn't say it, that's been said. We can take a vacation and pick a month, October, September, versus having to do them just in those summer times. You still do get a summer in the quote-unquote year-round calendar. It's just an abbreviated 5-6 weeks. Better attendance, okay? Teacher attendance and student attendance. People who've gone on this have said, the reason we did it is for improved attendance, okay? Not all the research and data is back on that, but that's been said. Help recruit and retain teachers. Testing schedules will allow for adequate administration, so there will be fewer breaks in April and May. Everybody that I've talked to in district and even out of district has said, everybody kind of understands, all hands on deck. In those last 2 months, nobody's talking about days out and all that. Maybe not going to school during spring break, obviously, which is in March. Probably not on Easter, but every other day we're expecting to be in school. Shorter summer break should lead to less learning loss. Everybody knows the summer slide is a real thing, especially in households and in communities where access to books and maybe tutorial programs in the summer are not rampant. Campus offices would be open 8 to 4, Monday through Friday for non-holiday breaks. All extended contract employees report to work as usual. We talked about this at length. We can talk about it more today if you want to, but I think everybody's starting to understand if you work an extended contract, you still work those days. We can get creative on some of that Monday through Friday during those weeks for extended contract folks to where we can work a summer schedule or something like that. So there could be some time like on Fridays. But the basic idea would be you're doing a job, you have more days in your contract, you still have to work those days. An added benefit that I've discovered recently is some districts are going to like principals meetings and other extended instructional meetings or administrative meetings during those times, which can be helpful. That way the principal or facilitator or whoever isn't pulled out of the building or out of their office or their workflow to do that. So these are things I've heard. I want more comments and thoughts as we go forward, so get those in your mind. So the current calendar that we have now, obviously it's not a copy and paste, but it kind of feels or would feel kind of like our calendar feels now. So we picked and chose some opportunities where we could have 3-day weeks or 3-day breaks or weekends, 4-day weekends here and there. There may be a day that we're out, and then the following Monday or vice versa Friday could be a professional learning day. Not a day where students are there for contact time, but a time where teachers could be learning without kids in the building, which we all know is a positive thing. Professional development, planning, all those things are required, and we have to follow up and do those things. This allows us to be a little bit more creative with that time. School ends generally that last week of May. This year, ours is going into the 2nd of June for work days, but that's generally the timeline of when school would be out with flexibility. So we could get even more creative with this, but it would kind of look more quote-unquote traditional. The big deal is that we're using hours and not days, so that for us, that amounts to about 176 versus 178 student contact days with built-in time for AMI. So if any of you know anything about AMI, most of you are educators or educators adjacent. AMIs are those days that used to be where you could do virtual instruction, count them as inclement weather day. Well, there's no such thing as an AMI day now, so what we have to do is essentially bank time up until a certain point. Return to your traditional calendar. If you've been in the district or been an educator longer than 18 months, you have lived this. So we would go back to a situation where we're 178 days, traditional breaks, not that creative on when we're out. We may pick and choose some here and there, but kids are going 178. The stalwarts who do this, there are some, larger districts especially, they say, we need as much time as we can get with kids, we'll do the 178, and our community is used to the ones, it's really about community to be honest. Our community is used to the 178, but we're gonna do the 178. I think we're nimble enough, we're improving to be that we can maneuver a little quicker. Okay, the modified extended calendar. So this is what we proposed as one of the options last year. The date specifically very well may change, right? But school year would start around the 25th of July, last week of July, something like that. The school year ends around the end of the first week of June, maybe a little bit later, depending on when that start date is. Extended breaks throughout the school year, approximately every 4 to 6 weeks up until that testing time. So for example, the week of Labor Day or that Labor Day week, that for example could be one. The first week of October could be one. You get Thanksgiving week already, 2 weeks in December, that would change. A week in February, March, spring break, and then April and May pretty sparse. There are people who are real advocates for this. They want to do this because of those breaks. And I think sometimes what gets lost, they don't talk as much about the start time. Now, a traditional, or a real, I should say, year-round calendar, you would not have 5 or 6 weeks in the summer. You just wouldn't. You might have 3, or 2, or 4, maybe. It's not truly a year-round calendar. We say year-round, and that's depending on who you're talking to, that could be a viscerally positive thing or a viscerally negative thing. So I think the best thing to do going forward, and I'll try to do it myself, I'll just label it that way like everybody else has, taking that out of our vocabulary. But it's this modified extended calendar that looks something like this. One of the big challenges that I can foresee will be collaboration with our local community college. Not to say that we won't figure it out, because we certainly will, because we care about kids and we're adults, but it will be something to figure out because we have a great partnership, more so than literally everyone else that I've talked to who does this. And we want to keep it that way. So the Collegiate Academy, the Secondary Career Center, kids getting a year of college or close to a year of college or a semester of college, technical certificates, we're building on those programs. They don't operate on this kind of calendar. They operate on a more traditional / modified calendar. We will just have to literally figure that out. Additional considerations. These are just, kind of a laundry list, I guess, trying to read your mind a little bit. The UAHT collaboration, I've had some members of the Board of Visitors for UHT call me and say, tell me about this a little more. So, I know there's not 300 people in here, but as soon as that decision gets made on the school board meeting, I guarantee I'll get 300 phone calls. Like, I know how that works. Specialized tutoring after school structure, I would still want to run after school / break time, interventions, extended time, where it's not just general child care, but providing some almost like after school structure or really like summer school structure during those times. There are kids and parents in our community that would highly benefit from this, for real, especially from the ages of 4 to 12, 14, 13. That we could provide some additional assistance and also make it very educational, tier 2, tier 3 type interventions with some extension opportunities. Curricular, extracurricular, training and hours, this is like band, football, all those things. I know that becomes a part of the conversation in any small town in Arkansas. We would still train during those times. We would still have practice during those times. You can't just take a week off of practice in the middle of season. There will still probably be football games during those weeks. They're doing it, folks are doing it now, so that shouldn't be too foreign to people if we went to that structure. Extended contract employees, we put that earlier, that would still work. Data from other schools in terms of student data is very mixed. Still trying to connect with Marion a little bit on some of their data. The Osceola data does not bear out positively. There's a lot of factors with Osceola, I think, that aren't just calendar-based. There's not really any data to come back right now from the surrounding ones that we've had. That's kind of an in-process conversation. Early reports from surrounding districts, I have reached out and talked to folks about that. The administrative structure has been a positive thing, as I mentioned. Meetings, trainings for those extended contract employees viewed as a positive. Timeline for the decision. I would love it if we had our calendar conversations, our next year staffing conversations. We have middle school reconfiguration that we're going through, all that decision-making process there, where folks are going in terms of their actual, even down to the room that they're going to be teaching in, all those things. PD schedule, you name it, done, completed by February. And then the middle school reconfiguration and the impact on that, we know these things are coming, so I don't really anticipate it being an actual impact in terms of not being able to do it in a feasible way. It just means we have to get intentional with our talent. Here's my next step, so you know, and you can hold me, this is as much accountability for me as it is for anything else, is work and function through the PPC with this, kind of get those different versions out there. They're already, believe it or not, they're already working on it. I've seen 2 versions of the calendar already. And have them look at it, and then whenever we get to a good place, then send that out. So that we get the actual feedback we want. But here's what I don't want. This whole thing would be a waste of time to me if we go through this whole process and don't feel like we got anybody invested in the decision that's outside of our 314 employees. I love y'all. Thank y'all for coming out. David, thank you for videoing this, and we'll get some more information out to you shortly.